since the hypothesis is that the story's protagonist is our rap line, and that they only begin their journey towards self-discovery after the fateful meeting with whom or what they consider the great love of their lives, the next logical step in solving this puzzle is obviously trying to scan the albums to see if there is anything that could tell us who or what exactly is this love for each one of them. Who are the story's three hairs, basically? Who is hair? First off, let's start from the most obvious place to look for clues in the song Outro Hair. In Outro Hair, she rightly pointed out something, and that is the oddity of specifically stating someone's gender. In her lyrics analysis blog, she says, quote, "When I first listened to the song, Outro Hair, I found the lyrics. All three of them recite, I call you hair, a bit strange. Because if I was talking about someone who happened to be a female, I wouldn't even think to specify why I'm choosing to refer to her with a singular feminine pronoun, or to specifically point out that detail. I would just use the pronoun in a natural way in the text." And I completely agree with this. In fact, that one sentence stood out as odd to me as well when I listened to the song for the first time. She continues, "The act of having to state specifically that you're assigning someone the pronoun her obviously implies that this someone isn't actually a singular female. So here is our first hint. Her isn't for any of the three actually a singular female. But there are many more too. I'll try to be as quick as I can not to bore you too much. Being the trivias, as we saw, the most personal songs in the albums, and the only ones where each of the members' situations is talked about at length in the specific, albeit still encrypted, metaphorical ways, it's only rational that we will look at those first, since they are the ones where the biggest clues about each of their hairs' identities would most likely be. And, spoiler alert, they are, obviously, internal consistency, remember? In Trivia Just Dance, J-Hope describes the first meeting with his hair this way. If you ask me about that moment, it was bright sunshine falling down, and it was like a one-shot for my eyes. If you keep in mind that this is a performer that we're talking about, it's hard to miss that this might be a metaphorical way to describe the first moment J-Hope got to dance on a real stage, with the bright sunshine falling down being a metaphor for the bright stage lights illuminating him. Furthermore, Koreans use the term one shot to refer to the act of drinking all of the alcoholic content in their glass in one go. So the sentence, "it was like a one shot for my eyes," could mean that the sight he found himself in front of was both a lot to take in at once and addictive at the same time, which would perfectly fit the type of sight he would be greeted with upon setting foot on stage for the first time. A lot of people greeting him with enthusiastic cheers, which is supported by the fact that BTS made an entire song comparing the act of drinking alcohol to that of living the life of a performing artist, Dionysus, which lyrics were written by J-Hope himself, as it was revealed in a comeback special. The song is all about comparing the feeling of creating art and performing for someone to that of drinking alcohol, with both activities being portrayed as pleasurable yet terribly addictive. Comparison, which was originally inspired by the similarity between the Korean words for alcohol and art. 술 and 예술. I mean, even the term one shot itself appears all over Dionysus' lyrics. Pretty obvious. And the following sentence also corroborates this first guess, as we have the line, turning on music in those vibes. And music would naturally be part of the scene if he's indeed referring to the first time he danced on a big stage. Many famous people in the entertainment business have said that the public is the big love of their lives. And I think the same thing could be true for our J-Hope. There are many sentences in this song that seem to strongly suggest that his hair is not a single person at all, but rather his audience. The people whose existence gave a purpose and a meaning to his life, like, quote, my dream that had no purpose now becomes something that takes a form. And, quote, even rough breathing, baby, even shedding sweat, baby, because of you, it all has meaning. Even the suffocating practice room. But maybe most obvious of all is the sentence, let's get it on pop. With pop being the only capitalized word in the song, to have it being an explicit reference to a song from his 2018 mixtape, Whole World, Piece of Peace, where he sings, I want to help, I used to be like them, someone without a passion. Make dreams brighter, get rid of nightmares. Peace will be right there. I want to help, I used to be like them. Where them obviously stands for the people in the audience whose lives he wishes to brighten. Which pretty much spells out loud and clear that just like in pop, the one the song is meant to be for and about is his audience. But anyone who still has some doubts can simply look at the very specific sentence he uses while he talks about his hair in his verse in Outdoor Hair. Quote, greeting me with cheers, hair. Now, I don't think there is any need for me to explain this one because it's so obvious, but just in case, again, he is referring to the crowds watching him perform and greeting him with cheers every time he appears on stage. There is no doubt to me that the hair J-Hope is singing about is BTS's audience, something that will be pretty much confirmed when we will get to have a look at the following album series, Map of the Soul, and we will finally be able to see the bigger design behind the releases. Only then we'll get a clearer view of J-Hope's self-discovery journey, his hair, and the growth and transformation it made him go through. And the same thing is true for the other two members as well, and especially for the next one I'm going to talk about. Since the clues to get a clear understanding of what is going on with Yoongi are scattered across the two series but mostly residing in Map of the Soul, he is the hardest of the trio to analyze and answer questions for, only by using the ones in the Love Yourself series. But we will try anyway. Just keep in mind that any hypothesis that will be introduced in the next segment will be definitely more believable and understandable by the time we will get to examine the following releases and get a chance to apply all of the additional information. So don't worry. That said, let's still try to answer this with what we have at hand right now. Who is Yoongi's hair? In Outro Hair, Yoongi does make use of certain sentences that might lead someone to think he is also referring to their audience, just like J-Hope is, like, quote, I put on clothes I hate and excessive makeup, or, again, today, I wake up to makeup and dress up to mask on, so that I can become the me that you love. Which are clear, not too subtle references to his job as an idol. But that alone isn't enough to assume is talking to the public. As a matter of fact, we already have instead enough information to make an educated guess that won't be the case. After all, the metaphor of the three diverging roads was chosen for a reason, and that is, as we said, to give the idea that despite sharing similar themes, each of their situations is in the specific radically different from the other two, something completely separate. Three separate roads to represent three separate and unique situations, so conceptually it wouldn't make much sense for Yoongi's hair to be the same as J-Hope's. And you can tell as much from the lyrics of Trivia Seesaw, which are most definitely not about any audience. Seesaw is a song that is much deeper than it initially seems, and without the contextual evidence given by a deeper analysis of the album's works as a whole, can be severely underestimated. In the beginning, it might seem that the seesaw metaphor was chosen to simply represent the lack of stability and harmony in a relationship and the many emotional ups and downs that any type of relationship faces in a time of crisis, both because of how the popular seesaw game works and the fact that as a word and a verb, seesaw is normally used to describe both a rapid and repeated change from one situation, position, condition to another, and back again. But although that much is still certainly true, there is more to this visual metaphor than that. In fact, it is in itself an essential clue to discover Yoongi's hair real identity. By focusing too much on the fact that with its repeated up and down motions, it is meant to represent the concept of instability and repetition, you might end up not noticing another aspect that is very evident from the lyrics it's meant to symbolize. Power and balance. Because you see, balance is the most important thing when it comes to the seesaw game. It's what its entire core mechanic is based on. As you probably know, a seesaw only works correctly if the people playing with it are of similar weight, because if that isn't the case, the balance will be disrupted and that would defeat the entire point of the game. Which is not a small detail, because balance is, quote, a situation in which different elements are in a state where they are of equal weight, value, or force. So, by choosing this specific metaphor to describe a problematic relationship dynamic, Yoongi also smartly reveals, without the need to outright state it, that there is a case of power imbalance between the two parties involved. In fact, Yoongi complains about this more hidden aspect just as much as he complains about the emotional tiredness deriving from the cyclic repetition of the problems. Quote, "There have never been parallels in the first place. Being sick of each other is the only thing we ever reached a parallel in, although this wasn't the kind of parallel I wanted. If you pay close attention, it's clear that what he's mostly upset about, and is probably one of the things causing issues in the relationship, is a case of power imbalance between them. Something that was present since the beginning, but that got underestimated as a possible cause of contention because it initially seemed to only bring forward feelings of playful rivalry, as suggested by the verse. At first, we showed off to each other and bragged about who was heavier while smiling at each other, while now we're trying to measure who's heavier, a competition between us. All of this is of interest to us because it gives us a very valuable piece of information, which is that this mysterious hair was definitely someone that by default Yoongi assumed would be and always stay his equal. As implied by the betrayal of this expectation, generating such an intense feeling of resentment to grant the creation of an entire song dedicated to this aspect. And needless to say, this narrows down the list of our suspects dramatically. because, as you can imagine, there is only a very limited amount of people in his life that he would expect to be and stay, for some reason, always his equals. Something which, by the way, technically means to quote, have the same status, rights, and opportunities. Can you tell who I'm talking about? It's the other BTS members, of course. They are Yoongi's hair. By logical definition, the members, each exactly being 1/7 of BTS, are what can be considered, at least from a purely conceptual standpoint, perfect equals. Being all members of the same group and working under the same exact type of contract, it would make sense for them to initially think of each other as people having, quote, the same status, rights, and opportunities they themselves did. But complete equality is something that only exists as a theoretical construct. Real life doesn't work that way. In BTS, there are people who are older than others. There is a leader. There are members who are so skilled in their own area of expertise that can and do act as mentors towards others, and members who are more popular than others, and plenty of other opportunities for any of the members to realize as the years go by that equality is nothing more than an illusion. When that happens, tension might arise. And that is what this song is, in my opinion, clearly about. Just look at these lines, for example. Maybe it was my greed, try to match myself with you, and now we are trying to measure who's heavier, the competition between us. That became a flame, igniting fight. Another thing to support the idea that Yoongi's hair are indeed the other BTS members is also the fact that Yoongi and his hair appear stuck in this situation, despite both having had enough of it and thinking that continuing isn't beneficial for either of them. If there was something or someone else discouraging them from quitting, other than the lingering feelings they might have for each other, like for example, a binding contract or millions of people who would be devastated by the news of the separation and be ready to point fingers at whomever they think is the one who wanted to leave, which is suggested by the fact that the reason this tiring situation has been carrying on for so long is that they can't decide who will leave first and take the blame. Let's not try to reason who will get off first and can keep doing this. We need to make a decision, or people are so sly, despite knowing hurt is going to come. Even if one isn't there, no one wants to be the bad guy. So the ambiguous battle of responsibilities continues. I think it's evident. It's just hard to listen to Seesaw and not to realize that it's very clearly about what Yoongi was going through when BTS was having some internal issues, and even considering disbandment, something that was first hinted at a few times and then pretty much outright stated by the members themselves on more than one occasion, like the time Jin gave his speech at the 2018 Mama Awards.
올해 초가 생각이 나는데요. 올해 초에 저희가 되게 심적으로 많이 힘들었었어요. 그래서 저희끼리 얘기를 하면서 해체를 할까 말까 고민도 했고, 근데 다시 마음을 정말 다잡고 이렇게.
I think that the seesaw metaphor is very fitting and paints a clear picture of what was Yoongi's perspective of the situation and what were his feelings towards it. Now for Namjoon. Even though the other two have left really big clues in order to allow people to guess the identity of their own hair, Namjoon takes it one step further, going as far as revealing the name of this person in his solo. I already made a video on this song, but I suggest to keep watching to see this piece in its original context. I think that Love is one of the most cleverly written songs ever. As I say on my Trivial Love video, Love's entire theme and lyrics are inspired by a clever self-ironic observation Namjoon made about Seokjin's name. Let's see why, and how I built an entire song around that. If you listen to the song, you already know that. The message is that the power of love transforms, smoothing out rigidities. And Namjoon himself, during the V-Live comeback special, said that he visually expressed this unique idea by playing around in the text with how the words in the song looked this time, rather than how they sounded like. All the wordplays in the lyrics have in fact something in common. They are a visual representation of the metaphorical concept that love reshapes you into a different, softer being and smooths your edges. Namjoon explained this during the comeback special with some examples. In Korean, the words saram and sarang, person, and love look almost identical, with the only exception being the last character, being square in person and round in love. This visual difference is used in the lyrics to show that love softens you up, smoothing out your sharper edges. The English words live and love are also used in the lyrics in a similar way. The straight line of the eye in live bends into the smoother, less sharp shape of the O of love to indicate how love changes and transforms the way you live your life by making you see it in a less rigid way. There are also other wordplays in the song, but I think this is enough for you to get the idea. Now for the most interesting part. There is, of course, another hidden play on words in the song that usually nobody mentions. This one reveals the song's intended double meaning, reveals the identity of the person it's dedicated to, and what was very obviously the inspiration behind the concept of the song. As we already said, the concept and theme of the song is that the power of love transforms, smoothing out rigidities. And that Namjoon visually illustrates this idea in the text by making straight lines meaningfully morph into something else. Which is why in the lyrics appear the following sentences. Before I knew you, my heart was filled with straight lines only. And in a myriad of straight lines, my love, my love, my love. Now, in Korean, the word for a straight line is 직선. And if you change the order of the characters in this word, we can see that it becomes Seokjin, which is, of course, Jin's name. That is written this way in Korean. This can't be a coincidence, not when the entire song is full of play on words, and especially not when the recurring pattern in the song is that of straight lines transforming into something else. I actually think this is the reason the idea for this original concept came to his mind in the first place. something which is actually hinted, by the lyrics themselves. Quote, I figured out because of you why person and love are similar. Which probably means that it was while he was trying to play around in his head with this fact, or to explain in words the importance and beauty behind this ironic coincidence, that he came to realize the reason why in Korean the words for person and love, 사람 and sarang, have a similar etymological root, and why they are so intrinsically connected. Of course, it could mean that it was the feeling for this person that inspired these thoughts, but how much more sense would it make if this type of very specific and elaborated thoughts on etymological roots and character structure originated from an equally specific observation pertaining to the fields of linguistics? I can't see it being a coincidence. This is either very clever artistic expression or his subconscious trying insanely hard to communicate something. And I definitely opt for artistic expression. There is no way this would have gone unnoticed by Namjoon. We saw many times how natural of a process it is for him to simultaneously treat individual graphic symbols as both units and as part of a system, which is why he can solve cryptograms where elements such as sound, shape, and meaning need to be considered as individual components and as part of a compound. Furthermore, if Namjoon's loved one not only had that name, but also happened to be a boy as well, it would give the entire song a very clever double meaning. In English, the most common way to refer to heterosexual people is straight. And obviously, Namjoon knows this. So, even in this case, we would have something going from straight to something else. Sexuality. Because, of course, falling in love with someone of the same gender will make you no longer straight. Which is very ironic, very clever, and was definitely meant to be one of the layers of the song, making the lyrics, before I knew you, my heart was filled with straight lines only, and in a myriad of straight lines, my love, my love, my love, even more meaningful and ironic. It is also interesting to note that Jin seemed to be very fond of the song, as he chose it both as his healing song during a segment with Suga DJ and as a song for when you're in love in a written Q&A. This song is such a cleverly written, multi-layered, self-ironic and meaningful confession that I personally consider it a masterpiece.